Years ago, Jon Nokes was a modestly paid science teacher at this school. One day, he tried to raise a small mortgage to buy a flat and was told that his salary was so low that he could forget it. Jon walked out of the school, out of Britain, and became a millionaire. Back in the 1950s in Redditch, no one had the slightest idea that Jon Nokes would develop a gift for making money.
I didn't know what he wanted. I don't think he knew what he wanted, to be perfectly honest with you. I think he just went in for teaching because he didn't know what else he wanted to be. He wanted to be a footballer, I think, really. That was his ambition. I thought he'd make a good teacher because he was fond of people, and he liked football and sport, and yes, he was very fond of his pupils, really.
So when Jon quit teaching, it was quite a shock.
I was very upset at the time. When he told me, I said, oh dear, what will you do?
Jon decided to make his new life in America, but with no idea of how he was going to make a living.
I did one of these drive-away cars that they call them, where you actually, somebody buys a car or they move across the other side of the country, and they pay people to drive their car across. So, and I had a car that had to be delivered to San Francisco. So I just took off. I remember going down to New Orleans, and actually I remember one couple of big emotions that hit me on that trip were, first of all, I remember being in the middle of Texas and realizing that the only people that I knew were probably 1,500 miles behind me, and I knew one person vaguely in Los Angeles, and that was 1,500 miles in front of me. And I think that was one of the most lonely feelings I had. You know, it lasted for about a day. I thought, what am I doing? You know, what am I? I'm just, you know, I've thrown in my career in England. I don't know anybody here, and it's a big, vast country. I mean, you don't realize how vast it is until you get here. I thought, you know what? I'm going to go and see the Pacific Ocean. And I went to San Diego. That was the shortest point from there. And I just remember sitting on that beach the first afternoon, and just, that was the strongest emotion I'd ever had. I thought, this is it. This is where I should be.
Across the northern third of Illinois this morning, it's gradually dying out in Martin.
For the next 4 years, Jon drifted around America.
I'd cashed in my teacher's pension in England, and I lived off that for a few months. And then obviously that ran out, and that's when I was prepared to do anything. I think when you have that emotion that you're going to start over, you don't care what you do. I tried to get a job bartending. I offered to even washing dishes in a restaurant, just to get my foot in the door.
He ended up acting as a casual salesman at state fairs all over the country.
It was hard because I was traveling a lot. I mean, I was traveling probably 7 or 8 months of the year all over the country. I used to go to Florida, Texas, Minneapolis, Chicago, you know, right up to Seattle, the Canadian border. I used to have a bed built in the back of my van, which actually, you know, I used to sleep better there than many good hotels. It was a great life. It was like, you know, it was being like on tour or something like that. It was almost like being in a rock band or something, or like a gypsy, but making some good money.
Would you look at that? Can we get a camera here for a close-up to look at this?
Susie Watts, you can
Oh my
actually
goodness, that's
absorb...
an entire can of soda.
But John's big money will be made through marketing of all things a floor mop.
I had a Swedish friend who came back from a vacation in Sweden. I think that was the Christmas of 1990. And he came back and he told me about this particular mop he'd seen, or a version of it, where they used it's like a rayon material. It's a very absorbent material. But we'd been selling just the cloths, you know, they were in car shows and stuff like that. And he said maybe this would go in the States. I can't remember ever seeing any mop using this material being made in the States. And that's really where it began. It began just a little scrap of paper with a fax number on it that he'd scribbled down off a sticker that was attached to this mop.
Oh no! Just look at that sticky mess! Don't scrub that floor on your hands and knees. Introducing Smart Mop.
Like many self-made millionaires, John's success started with one big gamble. He scraped together every last penny to make this infomercial on America's main shopping channel.
Infomercial really stands for like information commercial. It's a long TV commercial. It's at 28.5 minutes is what they normally run. And it's normally a new product that needs perhaps a little bit of explanation, or you need to convince the public that this is something they should really buy. And it's normally what they call a direct response, which means you watch the commercial and 2 or 3 times during the commercial they'll give you a toll-free number to call, and you actually order it right then and there with your credit card.
It's an innovative, tough new mop that thinks it's a vacuum cleaner.
The very first commercial was an instant success.
Let me show you why this mop is so amazing. Let's give him a
I
hand.
got a telephone call from the vice president of a company called West Telemarketing, which is the biggest telemarketing company in the United States. John? I said, yeah. He goes, I just want to tell you you're my hero. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, I've been in this business 21 years. And he said, this is only the second time I've ever seen an opening weekend response to this kind of commercial. And I said, well, that sounds good news. He said, it's remarkable. He said, you guys have like a huge hit here. And it's been likened since to like just trying to hang on to a runaway train or something. It was tough.
John's mop supplier in Holland began selling to other companies behind his back. So he opened his own factory here in Los Angeles.
Started making the mops, which is probably 3.5 years ago here. We basically had to go from an empty warehouse to 1 million mops a month in 1 month. So we had to get a lot of employees in, train them very quickly, and nobody said we could do it, but we did. To date, we've sold about 11 million units. It was never my intention to be a manufacturing company, but it certainly helped our success.
This summer, John went back to his old school for the first time since he walked out 17 years ago over his mortgage rejection.
I was looking for a flat, so I thought, well, I should start looking to the future, and most of the ground level flats or whatever I couldn't afford, so it was like the second level was always the cheaper, less desirable ones, and I remember found one that was pretty nice in an area in Bristol, and when I went to the estate agents took me to either to this mortgage company or a bank, and when they looked at what I was earning, they basically told me that I didn't earn enough to qualify for the mortgage. So that was another thing, made me kind of cynical. I thought, I've been at university twice. I got a degree in biology and education, and I didn't even earn enough after all this time. And that was probably my 3rd year of teaching here by then as well. So between university and teaching, I was probably 7 years into a career and told that I didn't earn enough to buy a 2nd floor flat. And I thought, well, obviously I have to go to some other country where I can make enough to buy a 2nd floor flat.
John's lab assistant at the school was Pat Walsh.
Yeah, I used to teach the science classes in here with the general science.
Yeah.
with the lesser able pupils who really didn't want to be here in the last year of school. But
Remember the old skeleton over in M13? We put it in the window and frightened the $6 with it. Pulled back the curtain and there was a skeleton sat in the window.
We're always a practical joke. But, you know, I always got on great with the kids. The kids were never really part of the equation. I mean, I always had a good relationship with them. I always loved teaching them. But at that time, I just thought that the opportunities for young teachers was pathetic. I think the headmaster probably wanted me to stay on, or at least stay in the profession, but I remember some of the other teachers were like, what are you going to do? I always remember that, but what are you going to do? And I thought, well, anything, you know, I mean, the world's still there. I was only 27, 28 years old when I quit, so it wasn't like my life was over.
That night, John put £600 behind the bar at this pub and invited as many old colleagues and former pupils as he could find.
They don't look that different. You never know after 20 years, but, you know, I think they've aged pretty well, most of them. I don't think they keep the same about me.
I remember feeling that in such a waste that he was going to give it all up. He hadn't been teaching very long, and I still feel that now.
Yeah, there was something missing. You know, walking down the corridors, you expected to see John come out of his classroom, you know, ahead of you, making for the staff room for his coffee.
It's nice to see he's been very successful, but I think it's a great shame when, you know, good teachers do leave the teaching profession.
And it makes me think that, you know, at least I did something that was worthwhile when I was teaching. You know, they still think, you know, highly of me. My three favourites. Come on.
2 days later, John was back on his new home ground, Santa Monica, California. He's now also a partner in a company called The Checkered Flag, which deals in classic cars.
British cars.
But look, you know, I mean, this is the typical thing now. This guy spent $25,000 restoring it, and we're selling it for $18,000. You know, it's
What happened to George Clooney's car?
he wanted a little too much, right? So we, you know, he decided he missed it more than the money.
Oh, so he took it back?
Yeah, to just get $4 million for this film. I think he wasn't too worried about a $50,000 car.
John loves cars, and this business means he's spoilt for choice.
Life is a lot easier when the sun's shining. You know, I mean, if you've got setbacks and, you know, you're a little bit down, or you've got, you know, or things aren't going quite as well as you wanted them to. If the weather's great, you can still get out there and do something. Everybody looks so fit and healthy and happy, and it was great weather, and, you know, wonderful.
John now has everything a man could want, a young son called Jake and a wife who was once a Texan beauty queen. Darby Daniel, as she was then, was the girl who promoted Coors beer all over America.
I worked for Coors for 6 years. I was the oldest Coors Light girl. You know, I was 24 for many years there. And I traveled all around the country. I went from regional Texas to national to international, Japan, and things of that nature. Posters, billboards, commercials. Had a blast. It was a good time. It was a great time.
I'm down here in the pit at Jack Murphy Stadium. We are having some fun tonight.
From promoting beer, Darby went on to become the girl in the pits for an American sports TV channel.
Larry, we've got Rob McCaffrin with the Ford Rough Riding Racing Team. How you doing, Rob?
Doing real good tonight, Darby.
Tell us about that Thunder truck.
Well, this Ford truck that we have here has about 750 horsepower, and I'm really excited to get it out there on the track.
It was just great to, you know, catch those moments on tape and thinking this really is live. You know, this is it. You can't make a mistake here, and if you do, oh well, oops. You know.
Hey, Greg, you ended up on your head last time. What's going to happen this time?
Hopefully not the same.
The Coors job led me to my dream. And then I met John, and which is the next part of my dream.
First time I ever met her was in a restaurant in Santa Monica, and I walked in and she had her back to me, and she turned around. It was one of those things where your eyes meet, and it was like, oh my goodness. And I actually made a joke to her that night, literally about 20 minutes after meeting her. I said, you know, I'm in trouble here.
John and Darby were on holiday in Greece when he decided to ask her to marry him.
We were in Mykonos, and we were in a beautiful restaurant on the edge of the water. And we were sitting there at the table, and it was crowded, and then I went down on one knee and, you know, did that usual whole proposal thing. And said, I do want to marry you. She said, of course I will. I said, yeah, but I want to marry you here. So that night we thought, great. We went back to the hotel, and the manager I got to be friends with. I walked up to him, I said, listen, I want to get married tomorrow. And he kind of just looked at me like he thought I was crazy and said, you drink too much ouzo. And then he said, maybe you should sleep on it tonight. And I said, no, I really want to do it. So he said, okay, tomorrow we'll try and, you know, arrange it. But unfortunately, next day I came down and they said, you can't get married for at least 10 days because you have to file the papers.
So instead of a quiet little ceremony in Greece, the wedding was in Dallas. And as you might expect, Dallas wedding videos are the longest in the world.
I'm a little nervous, but I'm sure I'm not going to faint. Everything's going to work out fine. And I hope you remember to put this thing when you kiss me, because everybody tells me I'm going to wear it down like this. But anyway, I love you.
No matter what happens, one thing I promise you is I will love you for the rest of your life.
I want you to know how happy I am and that I can't talk to you too much on the video.
Those whom God has joined together, let no one separate. John, you may kiss the bride.
It was a great wedding. I mean, people came in from all over, from Europe, Sweden, and England, and France, and all over the States. It was a great time. Great time. Quite expensive, but it was great.
Today, John and his family live in a $1 million house overlooking Malibu. Darby's expecting their second child.
We drove up here, we got to the front doors, we opened the front doors, and we looked at each other and go, this is it. This is it. This is the dream. I used to do tear sheets myself out of like Architectural Digest and all these magazines. It was like my pastime. My mom and I used to do it. I used to do tear sheets and like put them on my refrigerator and say, someday I'm going to buy myself this house. And I have to say that this house is that house. This dream house is my dream house. It's mine.
It was like instantly, I just looked at the view and I thought, oh, this is it. When we first came up and we both loved, you know, dolphins, it's a thing I've had for a long time. And I saw the dolphin glass doors. We kind of just looked at each other like, wow, if this isn't a sign, what is, you know? You know, a lot of people have an image of Los Angeles that it's just this like concrete jungle and nothing but smog, and this is just beautiful out here. Nothing could be further from the truth. The nice thing is I have the Santa Monica Mountains behind me, which I always love the mountains, and I got the ocean, the Pacific Ocean in front.
It's really a panoramic view, and it's just absolutely one of the most gorgeous views I've ever seen in my life. Men think of house as a house. It's an investment, it's a house. Women, on the other hand, I really think of it as a home. This is my home, you know, and I've decorated it myself. It's, you know, it's our personality, it's our home. And it's very important because it's really my first home that I've ever had. And so when we bought this house, we thought, well, it's got 4 rooms downstairs. We want to have 3 children, a guest room. Fine, we're set. So this will be hopefully our home for the next 30 years.
My ambition now is to create more free time to enjoy it.
But in this country, of all countries, people are always saying, what are you worth? Could you put a figure on yourself?
Oh. Well, I got to think what the tax man would take afterwards. I don't know, we were hoping to get, we were hoping the company was worth 20 million last year. But like I said, the value goes up and down depending on the success rate. If we suddenly come out with a blockbuster commercial or maybe 2 commercials, we're going to be worth even more.
John has certainly come a long way from the back streets of Redditch, but he's remained close to his family, particularly his dad, Cliff.
We've always been great friends and good mates, and when John was young and Cliff was younger, he used to take him to work with him each Saturday morning. He used to look forward to going to work with his dad.
John phones home every other day, but since suffering a stroke, his father can only communicate with his son by writing.
No, I didn't expect him to become a millionaire. When you become a millionaire, you've got to have courage to start up in business in a foreign land. You're very proud of him.
Yeah, I am.
It's like a feeling of disbelief because he was always like, like an icon to me. I mean, he's probably the only hero I ever had, the only true hero. And thank God he stabilized and they didn't have to operate, and he's slowly recovering now. But there was a while there I was, I felt the worst.
Nice.
Jon Nokes, who could by now have been a middle-aged teacher looking forward to early retirement, lives instead overlooking the most expensive stretch of coastline in the world. But he's wary of complacency.
Perspectives change, especially now with wife and baby and the house. I mean, it's nice to have a big house, but then you realise how much it costs just to maintain it. And I'm sure it was going to like poor old soul, but it makes you think you need a lot more to retire on than you think you do, especially out here. It's a risky business. It's not only an entrepreneurial business, but it's a business with an incredibly high failure rate. I mean, it's in this country, it has a failure rate in terms of the success of direct response commercials of 98%, which means 1 in 50 works.
Having trouble entertaining your cat? Is that kitty bored with chew toys and catnip? Introducing Laser Mouse, the newest, funnest, high-tech pet craze going.
Which is why John is always developing new and unusual products.
This safe handheld device will keep your pet entertained for hours, indoors and out, day or night.
I love Laser Mouse.
Their cat leaves you these little gifts behind, and of course, because they're cats, they like to bury them and they often break them up.
John may be making millions out of mops, mice and mess, but he's taking nothing for granted.
Isn't that clever?
Success is a journey, not a destination. So I've never felt like I've arrived or I've made it. I'm very cynical about that statement because I know quite a few people in my time in Los Angeles who've made it and they've lost it. So I don't know what that means. They're back to where they were before. And so what drives me is that feeling of working hard and for many years to get here. And there's another thing about it's harder to stay at the top than to reach it. So all those things combined is just what keeps me going.
Next week on Millionaires, the man who lost £50 million in the recession, but today can afford to smoke £700 cigars. That's Peter de Savary, the Buccaneer, next Sunday.